So the year is almost over, and it's been, interesting? Hey, it might not have been great, but at least we got some really solid tech this year. So without further ado, here are my top 3 phones released this year. At this point in their yearly release schedule, it's pretty much safe to say that Apple has figured it all out. It's also safe to say that the best iPhone in any given year is going to be the latest model, and that's definitely the case with the iPhone 14 Pro models. I think pretty much anyone who has used an iPhone at any point would agree that Apple isn't exactly on the cutting edge when it comes to upgrades and new features. Their method of waiting a couple years for innovations to mature before adding them to their hardware really works for them. And when you combine that with arguably the most well-built devices on the market, and also probably the best marketing team in the business, you get sales. Lots and lots of sales. So I was really surprised when they announced a new feature at the Apple keynote this year that I hadn't seen before.
We're calling it the Dynamic Island.
How about new?
Look, silly naming conventions aside, Dynamic Island is a really innovative way to handle notifications, and it's implemented so smoothly into the OS. While it's true that not a lot of apps take advantage of it, even now some 3+ months after the phone's release, it's just so much more interesting than your standard hole punch at the top of the phone. We also saw a slew of other considerable upgrades this year with a new processor, a brighter HDR display, an upgraded camera system, and a first time on iPhone always on display. Now some of these will matter more to you than others. For instance, I didn't really care for the always on display implementation, but overall it's really hard not to see this as a solid upgrade over last year's iPhone 13 Pro. Now it wasn't all sunshines and rainbows as we saw the iPhone 14 lineup, in the US at least, move to eSIM only, no more SIM cards. I wasn't a fan of this move when it was announced and I'm still not today. eSIM technology just isn't as mature at this point, and it's been sort of a pain point for me as a reviewer, and someone who swaps phones a good bit and also frequently changes phone providers. This probably won't be a big deal for most people, and that's great, but I'm kind of left scratching my head as to what the upside is for making this move. Okay, rant over. All that being said, most years, I'd say it's probably safe to skip a generation before deciding to upgrade your iPhone. But this year, there's more than enough there to justify the move. Folding phones are cool. Are they practical? Not exactly. Are they affordable? Not even close. Are they gimmicky? Kind of. But it really feels like one of those things you don't fully understand and can't see yourself using until you actually use one. It's like a light bulb comes on after you've gotten used to what it can offer and adjusted to the new way of using a phone. You find it's really, really hard to go back to your typical slab of glass and metal. Afterwards, everything else just feels boring by comparison. And that's where the Galaxy Z Fold 4 comes in. Samsung has slowly, and it feels like really slowly, perfected their large folding phone over the last 4 generations, and finally reached a point where I don't have hardly any hesitation recommending this phone. But what about build quality and durability? Well, the phone feels rock solid, and with a little care, really feels like it could last as long as you want it to. Samsung made the front screen ever so slightly wider, but it makes such a big difference when you don't feel like opening the phone up just to send a text message. How about the software experience? That was my main gripe in previous years, and that's been addressed as well with the new taskbar for better navigation. Not to mention the upgraded processor that improves performance and battery life, making for a really good, fluid software experience. The camera has also saw an upgrade this year with a new primary lens as well as an upgraded 3x telephoto lens, so the gap between the best Samsung lenses on the S22 Ultra and the Z Fold 4 is considerably smaller than last year. I just keep finding new ways to use this thing. Whether it's an e-reader one day, or taking notes with an S Pen, or watching movies with the really good built-in speakers, this thing is just awesome. It's also a head turner. I've had so many people see me using it and immediately come over and ask, what is that? But there are a few cons that come with it as well. First, the crease. Yes, the crease is still there, and yes, it's visible sometimes. It really kind of fades away after you've used the phone for a bit, but every now and then the light will catch it just right and I'll think, I wish it wasn't there. Second is the size and bulk of the phone. While it is narrower than most phones, it's still pretty thick when folded closed, and definitely as heavy as carrying around 2 phones when it's in your pocket. Lastly, the ergonomics are not great. It's definitely a two-handed phone most of the time, as it's near impossible to open with one hand, and I would absolutely recommend buying a case or getting a pop socket or something that helps you grip it when you're holding it and it's open. The last thing you want to do is drop this thing. These reasons I just mentioned and the really high asking price are the only reason this isn't number 1 on my list this year. But overall, it's a great phone, great experience, and I really recommend you try one out if you get the chance. Okay, this one may be a bit of a surprise for you, but it may not, as I was researching around a little to write this video, and I noticed a lot of news outlets agreed with my number 1 pick, which is the Pixel 7. Now, I'll admit it, I'm somewhat of a Pixel fan. I've used Pixels dating back to the Pixel 3, and they've always been some of my favorite phones. But man, has Google made some really weird choices through the years. different designs and camera layouts and features added one year, then removed the next. It felt like they were just throwing things at the wall to see what would stick. But like I said in my Pixel 6 review last year, something felt different about that phone, in a good way. And this year was finally about refinement instead of going back to the drawing board and starting all over again from scratch. We've got pretty much the same design as last year, with subtle improvements in design like the camera lens frame flowing into the body and smaller bezels on the front screen. They shrunk the phone slightly from 6.4 inches to 6.3 inches, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does make a difference in one-handed usability. If you've ever watched any of my previous videos, you know how much I like smaller phones, and this one's not quite the perfect size, but it's almost there. It's got an upgraded Tensor chip called the G2 for better performance, the same 90Hz refresh rate on the screen, and this year they finally added back Face Unlock to go with an improved in-screen fingerprint reader. And while it's got pretty much the same cameras on the back as last year, we did see an improvement in photography processing thanks to the new chip. And these cameras are no slouch. They can go head to head with virtually any top-of-the-line flagships and do just as well in a variety of lighting conditions. So what separates the Pixel 7 from the competition, and why is it number one on my list? Quite simply, it's the price to performance ratio. The phone retails for $599, and it's been on sale pretty much non-stop since it was released. No other phone is going to give you what the Pixel 7 offers in terms of photography, clean software, fast updates, and the Pixel exclusive features like spam call screening, music recognition, live transcribe, etc. for this price. Seriously, I've been a huge fan of all the software tweaks Google provides in pretty much every video I've done about Pixels in the past. Just use all of them for a while and then try to go to another phone and you will see what I mean. So what are the downsides? Well, battery life isn't the best. They actually shrunk the battery this year, but it still lasts about as long as the Pixel 6 did last year, although that's not necessarily something to brag about. Second, though the fingerprint reader is improved and I can definitely tell a difference, it's still hit or miss sometimes, though this is negated somewhat by the addition of Face Unlock. So why the Pixel 7 and not the Pixel 7 Pro? Well, that also comes down to price. The Pro starts at $899, and I just don't see the $300 difference in the hardware. You do get a bigger screen with a 120Hz refresh rate and a telephoto lens, but that's a pretty big ask for a few improvements. I also appreciate the flat screen on the regular Pixel 7 as opposed to the curved screen on the 7 Pro. But if you like bigger devices, then by all means the 7 Pro might be right up your alley. But when it comes down to it, that perfect combination of phone size, features, and price makes the Pixel 7 my phone of the year. But what's your phone of the year? Unfortunately, I didn't get to test out every phone released this year, and there very well could be something out there that's better than what I have here. If so, let me know. As always, I appreciate all of you watching and everybody that subscribed this year and watched my videos. I hope you have a great holiday season, and I'll see you in the next one.